Hi, Alexander. Nice work on your Arbans practice. This is going to be the weirdest little mini lesson ever, but I want to start by saying that I really would like it if you would play these one more time. I'd love to get one thing fixed. Here's the good news. The same issue kind of pervades each thing, and it is so important to your trumpet playing that it's worth it to go slow, okay? And so meaning, I'm not going to record a whole bunch of more whiz bang stuff and then progress. I will once you just fix one thing for me, okay? And let's just listen to a short bit of your Arbans here. Okay, so let's talk about what's good. What's good is if you took that like fabric or something and cut out the center bit of it and just look at it as a tone, beautiful trumpet tone. So many overtones. Any woodwind player or string player is going to be able to match you, to hear your overtones, to enjoy being in an ensemble with you. But in a way, there's one little thing going on, and I'm going to start talking in the way that is the problem. If I talked like this for the whole video, it would eventually get annoying, right? I think it would. And so I'm just reaching down here to plug in my computer real quick here. There we go. Okay. So, it's not, basically you're doing what I call kind of egging, or it sounds eggy, like, and it proves two things. In somewhere in your mind, you're kind of thinking of one note at a time. It can happen sometimes when teacher told you to do this, and you're trying to do a good example like it. Believe me, there's nothing unique to you. This is a trumpet player thing. So I brought a few little friends today to try to explain what I think's going on. And the first one is this. I use this around the house. My cat likes to sit on this brown paper, so we put it around. But if you can look at this tube, okay, and then shrink it down, let's say to this size of a tube, and all the way down even smaller to this tiny little tube. In fact, smaller even than a piece of this tube right here. I want you to imagine that when that air hits the beginning of this tube, which if I put it in my mouth, it's somewhere back there, right? Eventually, air comes from my lungs, or from my lungs here, hits that tube, and then eventually there's some end of that tube, right? And we've talked about that. And we call that your aperture. And a lot of strength comes from realizing that an aperture is a three-dimensional thing. It's not like two pieces of paper touching and then going blah. It's more of like a pathway through the lips, okay? Well, I'm going to make this brown paper sort of what I think of as the shape that you're playing on that Arbans exercise. Sorry for all the noise. It's that. And again, bear with me. It's not the greatest example, but boo up, boo up, boo up, boo up, boo up, from a nice narrow opening that something's letting it open up, right? And I think it comes from the goal of wanting each note to come out, but it's not playing from reserve. Reserve. I really want to drive that word home. Reserve, okay? So here's a basic example of static reserve. Look at this little ukulele. Can you imagine if I play this note and somebody's brought me somewhere I'm supposed to do the cue note before somebody sings happy birthday or whatever it is, and every time I play this note, this ukulele just kind of like a noodle bends and bow, boo, boo. It wouldn't be useful, right? And so this is a reserve. There's tension here. It's not in tune right now, but I can set this down and a minute later go, and it's the same. I can come back in 10 minutes. I can come back tomorrow. Now, is it going to slowly change over time? Of course. But I'm counting on this ukulele not turning into a noodle on me and moving all over the place. Well, I need my aperture to do the same thing. And what's tough with trumpet players is it's our imagination that does that. So I hope some of this feeds your imagination, and I would like you to play these exercises once more and just fix this one thing. Take a look here at this bottle of Lysol. And I'm going to hold this up here. Look at the little hole. See that little hole where the Lysol comes out? Now, can you imagine that if I'm going around the room and spraying and a little bit of, ooh, it smells good. I don't want this thing to go from tiny to bloop and just blop out a bunch of liquid all over the floor, right? Well, it's kind of the same with trumpet. I'm counting on a pressurized reserve, right? That's our air, and that's, to me, down here. Pressurized reserve, and then an aperture or an opening that stays the same, okay? Another example. Here's some WD-40. I don't want to spray too much WD-40, but here's a real good example, because here you have, here's our reserve, right? I know that it's pressurized in there. Well, that's like after I've taken a breath, that pressure down there is staying the same. Pressure, not tension, but pressurized air, right? And so I'll just, let me grab a piece of paper. I don't want to get WD-40 all over anything, but, right? It comes out the same. And see, that's dependable. Like, even in this case, I'm able to put a little bit on a piece of paper and not ruin my room. Now, what if partway through squirting this WD-40, this end right here opened up to be about that big? Bwap! Smearing, WD-40 all over the room. It doesn't work, right? So again, you have that beautiful tone, but something is happening in the pathway through your lips, which I would like you to think of as a tunnel or a tube that stays the same. And so I want to take a breath, right? I've talked about you take about 80%, and then I'm going to top off with the 20, and then okay? And I can't remember how I sound on the recordings per se. I wasn't in the greatest shape, but I want you, I would like to hear that you're singing from reserve. In other words, that it's not one note at a time that gets to go big as it wants to get, right? Because it's just, that's not going to work in most of our music. So once again, no problem. Here's a reverse reserve, and I know you have one of these at your house, right? In other words, this, that's creating an opposite reserve of blowing, sucking, right? But down here on this end, as I'm going around the room, this end right here doesn't suddenly get as big around as this big and accidentally suck my cat into there, right? I mean, it's just, so I hope this starts to make sense. Like, we're using a technology, and I think I go back to the very first lesson we had. This is not an instrument. This is a resonator that, when connected with my reserve capacity and my air and my imagination, somehow it all becomes an instrument. And just like I don't want this trumpet, while I'm playing it, to suddenly get bigger and smaller and decide to maybe smack me up the head with the bell, or I've been watching too many cartoons maybe, but we want a consistency, right? Just like I don't want this lead pipe to change, I don't want this pipe between my lips to change. Okay? So that's the first one. I'm getting that smoothness by making sure that the beginning in here and the end of my lip tunnel stays the same. Where does it stay the same? In my imagination. Am I forcing it and tightening stuff? No. I'm just making sure. I think this is a great image right here. This little straw that do 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 ba da 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 done, or bum 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 party dee dee. That you don't want suddenly the end of it to be getting smaller and going all over the place on you. Okay, so let's go to your other one. I think you can get what I'm talking about. You have in the past. So again, it's a simple fix. See, that sounds to me very much a beautiful tone. I'm not kidding you. Like, that's an audition-winning tone. The tone itself, if you take the babe, the resonance of it is gorgeous. But it just is so obviously one note at a time in your mind, and I think in your instrument. Okay, so again, it's like I can't play that on guitar, but here, something like that. But anyway, I mean, terrible, good, but you get the idea. The string is not going loose and tight, right? So even if it's short, like I can tell whether you're singing from reserve or not. Or longer. And it's how what I just played is not this. Like, you know, I got the note, okay, things are going on, right? So it's what we tried to talk about in the last lesson, you know, the ability to, even without a breath, go, I'm not going to breathe in. How am I doing that? I'm generating compression somewhere else, okay? I'm generating compression somewhere other than this tube. So that, you know, it's almost like a picture of me. Pressure, and then the release through a controlled tube, okay? Here's another example of a reserve. I use it to light the grill outside, okay? Now look, in here at all times is this reserve of pressure until it runs out, right? Now what would be more horrific than with a lighter than, and I'm not recommending playing around with fire in any way, but if this little hole that where the, you see it there, I can see it on the screen, where the gas comes out suddenly gets really big and like scorches my beard off my face, right? That's sort of the danger we present to an orchestra if we are not under control of our airstream and understanding the idea of reserve, okay? So again, another idea of reserve is like, and not needing to do this. And just letting it spin out of control, okay? I'm sorry for that, but I think I'm choosing to believe you're starting to get what I'm talking about. So I think you could fix that. In other words, once you start playing boopy ba 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 ba, it's always in this pressurized canister, okay? So back to this one, or back to the next one rather. On to the next one, sorry. Come on now. What's going on here? There we go. I'm going to skip the chromatic, actually. The chromatic was pretty good. I didn't have a problem with your chromatic at all, so. I mean, I'll admit, I hear some reserve there. I think you're just not speaking clearly. If you could, and that does come from just making sure that that inside part of this tube, I hate to put WD-40 in my mouth, but doesn't get obliterated or kind of, you know, the pathway between your lips can't be this at one time and then this short. Sorry, I'm trying to, this short, and then it's open here, and this one's, you know, but I'll admit that one's pretty good. But just make sure, listen to how I say it. All from in reserve, it comes from the sun pressure can. It comes from the pressure can, as opposed to ba 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 be ba 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 be ba, kind of, and again, I want to be honest. That sounds pretty good. If you could just clean it up a little bit. And all I'm doing mostly is making sure that once I start my sound, this passageway does not change. Like this second, then this second, then this second, every little second that I'm playing, nonstop, this little tunnel does not change, okay? So, if you could just, again, this is an easy fix. This is a high-level fix as well. And now, let's just see what's up here. Okay, so make me a deal, actually. I think if you don't mind, just bump the metronome up on all of these things a touch. I do think you're ready. I'll admit that when I listened the other day, I had more issues with it than I do now. Now I'm listening, it's like, oh, that once again, beautiful tone. Like, you fix this, you come to understand this sing from reserve thing, and that you reserve. That's why singers sing with their chest out. Nobody wants to go to the opera and hear you know, on your last breath, right? Sorry for all this, terrible, but make the phrase but 2 bars at a time, and up the pressure can let 2 bar a phrase so. And I've got a couple issues with that too, but so you're it's really close. I think if you could just, I think it's worth it. We will have more momentum later in the Arbans book if you do this one little adjustment here. I don't want to, it's like football. I don't want to focus on just getting down the field with the team because you're going to hit other teams that have some strategy figured out in this area, and I want you to do well. And so it's like, let's just regroup and get that reserve going, okay? Now, just to remind you, I really think, I bet it's been a while since you did some of those videos, but how, you know, sitting and rolling the shoulders, doing this with the head, and then just that no movement, you know, like look for anything that looks like this kind of this stuff, you know, like even a millimeter. It's not that this isn't ethics, you know, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's just a symptom. It's a sign that something's off. So even without breathing, I'm talking, I won't stop talking until I play on going. And once again, it's weird for a teacher to talk about, but it's not the sit-up abs. It's not the, oh my goodness, I'm going to let a toot in the elevator muscle. It's somewhere in between there. But there is a firing up of support far away from this tunnel, just like this can of WD-40, so that lubricant, or in our case, the air, can pass right through there. So that... You know, and if you're doing this and going... and ending up there, then then that's a symbol that you're missing the point. So all without that having changed. It's right there. I'm doing anything I need to with the whole rest of my body to keep that air passage going. Okay, and so if you would, I do think that you have a bit of like a hesitation thing. We need to kind of, if your tongue is muscled up to the point you need, that there's this big powerful muscle behind that you're negotiating with to start a tone. Another big sign. No biggie. Easy fix, actually, but you got to melt that glacier. The pressure, because you've let the pressure come up here. You've let the pressure of the WD-40 can be up right up here. It's very dangerous. I'm not going to want to go around and lubricate the door hinges with a bottle like that, because I don't want to get it all over the house, right? So just like in an orchestra, we want to be able to go. And check this out without even a tongue. I did not use my tongue on those, okay? I'm using a consistency of shape in my imagination. Okay, so I hope you'll listen to this. I hope you'll do one more recording of these exercises, and I promise you, we're not going to do this every time, but I just want to get this solidified, because we want to be playing long phrases. And by long phrases, it doesn't mean... I used to think it meant every note needs to be long, and like air, blow through the front door and the back door. Well, what teachers meant by that is keep this consistent. So can it be... I forgot the exercise, but we'll be getting to that next. It's like, that's a long phrase. So it doesn't mean not short. It means that this, where the air hits your tunnel, and then by the time it comes out, needs to stay the same. Did I miss any of my examples? I don't think so. But just here's another bigger one, like pretty out of tune. But it's like, once that gets tuned up and you head to the gig, you do not want this thing right here turning into a spaghetti noodle. And that's kind of what we allow to happen. So I just want to close by saying, once again, that this is not an instrument, but it is a good teacher of the kind of instrument we need to be. We supply the first pipe, the first valve, the first tube to this longer trumpet. And so it's so easy to look at trumpet and think about lips vibrating and the mouthpiece and our chops sore, all that kind of stuff. The longer that tube is, the better. And the more it can stay the same, just like this lead pipe, the better. So that... Okay? And like right now, I'm not playing quite as much as I normally do, and I'm not in the shape that I normally am. The only thing, Alexander, that I'm clinging to is the power of my mind. To not allow... Or the entrance of your Joplin. It's like I'm gonna trust that tube so much that I don't even need to use a tongue. I'm gonna go hoo, basically HOO. And it sounds almost the same. Okay, so that's the power of the mind. That is the power that if you keep that aperture the same, it's like the guy playing marimba. It's not changing shape on him. It's like the violinists that are in orchestra. They're playing actual instruments. You can drop that. It's holding a shape because its reserve is built into the tension. So it's also true that there is a certain amount of tension in playing. We want it to be as far away from the source of our sound making as possible. Just like it is on the guitar. Look, this is the soundboard. And the look all this way down here is where the tuning happens. So same with us, where, POO. you can see I'm doing a little bit of movement I'm not happy about. My chin is going, and I would want to work on that. Okay, so I hope some of that makes sense. If you don't mind, re-record those Arbans exercises with those in mind. Keep in mind this: don't play like this with eggy note shapes. Keep in mind the little ukulele. Keep in mind this good smelling spray that's going to keep that same. Tomorrow when I get up, it's going to be just the same. How amazing, right? Well, we can develop the same consistency in our imagination. Okay, so do that, and if you have questions, please let me know. I do feel a little bit out of communication because we're not doing this regularly. We don't have a regularly weekly time. I care about your trumpet playing, and so I want to, if this doesn't make sense, you really need to sit down next to somebody where you can hear them take that breath and be around that. You know, I don't want to be selfish in teaching you. So I hope some of these examples help. I'm so proud of your sound. That's the hardest thing. So many students might have this other thing figured out, but don't have your beauty of tone. And so you have a lot good going on, okay? Re-record those exercises just once. Doesn't need to be a big thing. Just a little bit. Show me an awareness that you can speak from reserve, that I have more air stored up and pressurized than what I'm using, and as a result I can talk and talk and talk. Wonderful to have you all here. Quick breath, and it's right back to that same pressurized. I'm not talking like that, okay? Enough of my horrible examples. I wish you well, and let me know if you have questions, okay? And then, and bump the metronome up just a little bit if you want, and then we'll go from there, all right? Take care, Alexander. All the best.